Welcome back to our investigation into one of history's most enduring mysteries. In our first episode, we explored the rich symbolic meanings behind Ravana's 10 heads, from representing vast knowledge to embodying destructive vices. But as we hinted, the story of Ravana isn't confined to a single interpretation or even a single version. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of textual variations that reveal how different cultures, time periods, and religious traditions have understood and transformed this iconic figure. What we're about to discover will challenge the idea that there's one correct version of Ravana's story. Instead, we'll see how this ancient character has been a living, evolving symbol that different societies have adapted to reflect their own values, beliefs, and understanding of human nature. Let's start with the source, the Valmiki Ramayana, considered the original version of this epic. Here, Ravana is established as the mighty Rakshasa king of Lanka, born to the sage Vishrava and the Rakshasi Kaikasi. He's portrayed as a complex figure, a great warrior, profound scholar, capable ruler, master of the Vayana, and devoted follower of Lord Shiva. The Valmiki Ramayana gives us the archetypal image of the 10-headed Ravana, but it also contains details that are absolutely crucial to our investigation. Here's the detail that stopped me in my tracks when I first encountered it. In the Sundara Kanda, when Hanuman secretly observes Ravana sleeping in his palace, the text describes him as having only one head and 2 arms. Think about the implications of this for a moment. If Ravana's 10 heads were a permanent physical characteristic, if he was literally born with 10 heads, why would the most authoritative version of his story specifically mention him appearing normal when sleeping? This single observation opens up multiple possibilities. Perhaps the 10 heads were something Ravana could manifest at will, a power he controlled rather than a fixed physical trait. Maybe they were an illusion he created to intimidate enemies, utilizing his mastery over Maya. Or possibly, they represented different aspects of his consciousness that became active during waking hours, but unified during sleep. The Valmiki Ramayana also preserves the Puranic account of how Ravana acquired his 10 heads. During intense penance to Lord Brahma, he repeatedly cut off his own head, 10 times in total. Each time, a new head would regenerate, allowing him to continue his devotion. Impressed by this extreme sacrifice, Brahma granted him the boon of retaining all 10 heads. This origin story suggests a divine rather than biological source for his polycephaly, but it raises its own questions about the nature of such regenerative capabilities. As the Ramayana spread across different regions and cultures, each adaptation reflected local sensibilities while maintaining the core narrative. The 12th century Tamil Kamba Ramayanam by poet Kamban presents a Ravana of greater psychological complexity. His motivation for abducting Sita is portrayed not just as revenge for his sister Surpanaka's humiliation, but as a complex mixture of love, lust, and wounded pride. Kamban's version also includes a fascinating detail about the abduction itself. To avoid the sin of touching another man's wife, Ravana lifts the very patch of earth on which Sita stands, carrying her along with her hermitage to Lanka. This shows a Ravana who, even in his transgression, maintains certain moral boundaries, a more nuanced portrayal than simple villainy. Tulsidas' 16th century Ramcharitmanas presents perhaps the most radical variation. In this version, Ravana doesn't actually kidnap the real Sita at all, but rather a Maya Sita, an illusory duplicate. The real Sita had been placed under the protection of Agni, the fire god, by Rama, who foresaw the abduction. This completely transforms our understanding of the entire conflict and Sita's subsequent trial by fire. When we move beyond Hindu traditions, the variations become even more striking. Buddhist literature features Ravana prominently, particularly in the Lankavatara Sutra, where he appears as a figure engaged in philosophical discourse. Jain versions present both Rama and Ravana as devout Jains and great spiritual figures, with Lakshmana, rather than Rama, being the one who ultimately defeats Ravana. But perhaps the most intriguing variations come from Southeast Asia, where the Ramayana was adapted into local cultural contexts. Javanese legends present a unique interpretation. Ravana is sometimes portrayed with only 9 heads, having sacrificed 1 head annually to Lord Shiva as an act of devotion. Each head represented a particular desire or attachment that he surrendered on his spiritual path. He continued this practice until only his true, essential head remained, earning Shiva's grace. This Javanese interpretation completely reframes the multiple heads as a spiritual practice rather than a sign of power or corruption. It suggests a Ravana who was actively working to transcend his limitations rather than being consumed by them. In Thailand's national epic, the Ramakien, Ravana is known as Thotsakain, meaning 10 necks or 10 faces. The Malay tradition presents perhaps the most sympathetic portrayal, where Ravana, Maharaja Wana, is sometimes depicted as more righteous than Rama himself, a complete moral inversion of the traditional narrative. The Adbhuta Ramayana introduces us to Mahiravana, described as Ravana's brother or ally, who possesses 1,000 heads. This detail is significant because it shows that polycephaly wasn't unique to Ravana, but was a recurring motif for powerful beings in ancient literature. Some later Puranic literature offers even more variations, with accounts suggesting Ravana originally had 11 heads and 22 hands, and that he fashioned a veena from 1 of his heads and 2 of his hands, a detail that adds artistic creation to his list of capabilities. The number 10 itself carries deep symbolic weight in Hindu thought. It represents completeness and totality, 10 avatars of Vishnu, 10 directions of space, 10 senses according to philosophical systems. This symbolic significance might explain why 10 became the standard number of heads attributed to Ravana, even when other traditions used different numbers. What emerges from this survey of variations is that Ravana's 10 heads function as a remarkably flexible symbolic construct. Different cultures could adapt the basic concept to convey their own understanding of power, knowledge, spirituality, and human nature. The variations in number, 1, 9, 10, 11, or even 1,000, suggest that the specific count was less important than what the multiplicity represented. This flexibility strongly supports the view that Ravana's heads were primarily symbolic rather than literal. If they represented a fixed biological reality, we would expect much more consistency across different traditions. Instead, we see creative adaptation that serves each culture's particular spiritual and moral framework. But this raises a fascinating question. If the heads were purely symbolic, why do some textual details, like Hanuman's observation of Ravana sleeping with 1 head, seem to treat them as a controllable physical phenomenon? Why do origin stories describe specific processes by which he acquired multiple heads? And why do archaeological and iconographic traditions consistently portray him with multiple heads across vast geographical and temporal distances? These questions point toward possibilities that go beyond simple symbolism. Could there be historical kernels within these mythological accounts? Might ancient storytellers have been preserving memories of actual capabilities or technologies that we no longer understand? In our next episode, we're going to explore the most controversial and mind-bending theories about Ravana's 10 heads. We'll examine claims that they might represent evidence of advanced ancient technology, biological manipulation, or even genetic engineering. We'll look at the archaeological evidence that some researchers claim supports these theories, and we'll critically analyze whether such explanations have any merit, or if they're simply modern projections onto ancient myths. The journey we're on is taking us to the very edge of what we think we know about the past. Are we dealing with pure symbolism, preserved history, or something else entirely? Join me next time as we venture into territory where ancient wisdom meets modern speculation, and where the line between myth and reality becomes increasingly blurred.